Hey everyone, I'm Mech VR and this is Vox Machine. And strap yourself in and hang on because today we're going for a ride in some of the best mechs in all of VR. Vox is a rare title in that it offers everything. A full single player campaign, competitive online multiplayer with co-op missions, and it has cross-play support between Quest and PC VR. The devs Spacebolt originally launched the game all the way back in September of 2018 as an early access multiplayer title for just PC VR. The game left that early access period 4 years later and seemingly out of nowhere included a hefty 8 to 10 hour campaign and a Quest 2 version. Vox is also one of the most immersive VR games I have ever played. It makes me forget that I played the entire game sitting in an office chair. That's because you take the pilot's seat in a massive rust bucket of a mech called a grinder.
Okay, the cockpit you see here is fully interactive. You gotta flip levers and tweak joysticks to get this beast moving. And it does take some getting used to because at first I didn't really like it. I thought it felt clunky and unintuitive, but the devs actually designed it that way on purpose, and it feels awesome. You really get the sense that you're operating a welded together behemoth. I mean, seriously, this thing feels like you're strapped to a walking lawnmower, but you're not mowing down grass here. You set your speed with this throttle lever here, and when you let go of it, you keep moving forward. To turn left and right, you move the joystick here. And this guy right here lets you fly. You pull it up to shoot into the air, and you can even strafe left and right with it. But keep an eye on your fuel gauge there, because that kind of mobility is a precious resource, and it slowly recharges. You can position your radar in and out, and this screen here allows you to keep track of your objectives. Now you probably noticed that the aiming is gaze based, and at first I didn't really like that either, but I grew to love it, and honestly I wouldn't have it any other way. But in some stupid way, my favorite part of this whole cockpit is this little guy right here. It's not the horn. It's pretty fun too. It is this trucker style CB radio that you can use to chat with other pilots. And I can't tell you how many times in the campaign I used this radio to try to talk back to the other characters in the game. And it doesn't even work that way. This game doesn't have voice recognition. It only works in the multiplayer, and it's kind of embarrassing how many times I was talking back to the other pilots in the campaign. But I loved it. And that's the immersive power of VR cockpit games, especially when you can reach out and just touch all this stuff. In my opinion, every single cockpit game needs VR support, whether that's sim racing, flight games, mech games, hell, I don't know, even submarine games. And if I were the president of all video games, my first executive order would be to mandate that every single cockpit game is required to have VR support. All these dials, gauges, and icons, they tell you something. This one keeps track of your health here, and this one keeps track of your weapons. And Vox has an impressive arsenal of weapons. You got machine guns, rail cannons, missiles, lasers, guided rockets, flak cannons, and a whole lot more. You can really cater the mech to your playstyle. You could sit back and snipe from afar with this cool magnified viewfinder, or run and gun with some cannons. But it's not quite as easy as hold down fire till enemy go boom. Each weapon generates heat, and yep, you guessed it, the more beef, the more heat, until you overload, forcing the mech to shut down until enough of that heat has dissipated so that you can turn the key and fire this bad boy back up. In total, there are 7 different grinders, ranging from heavy to light. As you would expect, the lighter grinders are faster and the bigger ones slower, but they also feel bigger and smaller to operate. The cockpit shakes a bit more when you're lumbering along in a heavy, and the smaller ones just kind of glide over the landscape. The weight also impacts the effectiveness of your boosters, helping convey just how massive the big ones are. In fact, the whole game just has this thick and gritty industrial sheen just kind of painted over top of everything. Vox just excels at conveying scale to the player, and I admire VR developers who capitalize on the medium's unique ability to do just that. You really gain an appreciation for the sheer size of these grinders in the lenses, and at times in the campaign, you encounter things that make even your mech feel small. The campaign itself is both amazing and kind of awful at the same time. The missions are great and varied. Some have you just shooting down enemies, but others have you defending objectives or avoiding mines while gathering fuel from an asteroid belt. The story is decent. It's nothing all too groundbreaking, but it does provide good context both outside and inside the grinder, as the chatter and storylines are further flashed out over My Favorite Radio. But the interludes between the missions are a struggle. You go on meaningless, cringy fetch quests and are often forced to talk to every crew member. It just gets in the way. Why am I doing a papier-mâché fetch quest to throw a party in the middle of a mech game? And the character animations are memorable, but not in a good way. I mean, you grow used to it, but I never found these sections of the game to be particularly enjoyable. And I think what happened here is that the devs just bit off a lot at one time. I mean, this is a lengthy 8 to 10 hour campaign that launched on multiple platforms at once. And it's not all bad, as I did enjoy the story. And Space Bull was just trying to find a way to give a bit of backstory and personality to the characters, but it just doesn't flow right. Thankfully, you can now skip most of these sequences, and even with all of its pacing problems, I still highly recommend that people play the campaign, because the gameplay is where these rusty mechs really shine, and there really is no other game like this in all of VR, because remember, it started out as an online multiplayer game. The game doesn't have a massive active player base, but it does have a dedicated one. Every time I checked, there were people playing, and you could always take down bots or get some friends together and do a private match. Also, Space Bullet runs a very active Discord where they organize events, and they're actually still updating the game. Like literally the day before this video went live, Space Bullet pushed a massive update adding in dynamic weather to the multiplayer. Remember, you could buy this game all the way back in 2018, and it's still getting updates. Love the dedication and commitment to the multiplayer. There's a good variety of multiplayer modes and maps here. You have your typical stuff like deathmatch, team deathmatch, but then there are more strategic game modes like stockpile, salvage, and hoverball, which is a bit of a twist on capture the flag. My personal favorite though is convoy, as it's purely cooperative, and I'm not that much of a competitive gamer anymore. But I did run into a few issues with the convoy getting stuck in the terrain. I admittedly have not spent enough time with the multiplayer in this game, as I'm plagued with connectivity issues that I think are more unique to my ISP than the game's problem itself. I have been able to play a few matches, but most of the time, even just trying to connect to a match in this game kills the internet in my entire house. Again, I think this is the fault of my ISP and not the game. I've debated looking into a VPN to see if those issues go away, but I have a hard time justifying paying for a VPN for just one game. So, if anyone has any good VPN recommendations with trial periods, let me know in the comments. But I have spent enough time with the bots to get a feel for the multiplayer. If you get a full 16 going at once, it's a Warzone on an epic scale. Positioning becomes paramount. If you charge straight in, you're going to get lit up from all sides. Personally, I like the smaller, more agile grinders. They lack a bit of firepower and punch, but they can make up for it by using their grinder as a sledgehammer, ramming into anyone unlucky enough to be on the other side of a boosted charge. But it's also common to see entire limbs or sections of mechs get blown off, and as you would expect, losing a leg affects mobility, and it's immensely satisfying to get that final hit that jettisons the enemy pilot up into the sky. And there are some really cool modifiers to matches, like adding in those Dune-style worms found in the campaign. Just make sure you have enough boost to get out of the way. In the end, Vox is a title that just offers so much. It looks stunning through the lenses of both PCVR and Quest. While this multiplayer game may not appeal to everyone, it does deserve a bigger player base. If you've never played a cockpit game in VR before, give Vox a try, as it's one of the best seated VR experiences ever made. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you're still here, give me a like. And if you want to see more content like this, press subscribe. Thanks. Bye.